Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 1,000 likes on this one. Dropping a like helps ensure more people see the content, but it also just lets me know I'm doing a good job. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated, as I do post content just like this all of the time. There is also this new hype feature where you can like hype a video. I think it's like supposed to help promote the video in the algorithm or something, and then if you get into like the top 100, something cool happens. I really don't know. If anybody knows what exactly that does, drop a comment and let me know. I guess I could just Google it, but I don't know. I'm just I'm thinking about this as I'm recording the intro, so I'll probably just wait to read y'all's comments and get an explanation then. Anyways, sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax. Enjoy the horror stories with no ads. Right after the ad break after this intro, there won't be any more ad breaks after that one. And as always, if you pick your nose, make sure nobody's watching. I've always liked October and the Halloween vibes it brought. As I got older, I stopped being able to have the same kind of childish wonder towards the season. Watching scary movies late at night, or going to haunted houses didn't feel the same. A coworker must have sensed this and offered that I join a group of his friends for a haunted asylum tour. I didn't know him very well, as we only worked together for 2 weeks. I debated whether I wanted to be with strangers for the night. It wasn't as if I had any other plans, so I accepted. He asked me to bring a camera, which he heard I owned. From the sounds of things, he wanted to record our outing and put it on his YouTube channel. I didn't care either way. The handheld camera had been a hand-me-down. It would be nice to finally use it outside of life events for coworkers. We met after work so he could drive us to the building. I've never heard of an asylum being within driving distance, I told him on the way. It was shut down after a lot of abuse was uncovered, and I mean a lot of nasty stuff. The city did everything it could to wipe the records of the place, and locals don't like talking about it because a lot of their older relatives worked there, Brian explained as he drove. I nodded as I half listened. I hadn't been able to find the name online. They must have done a great deal of scrubbing to erase this place so well. Since I wasn't paying much attention and focused more on my phone during the drive, I didn't know where we ended up. The road slowly became surrounded by trees, then turned into a dirty pathway I wasn't certain we should be driving along. This building was really out of the way. The trees finally parted, and I could see a massive building on top of a hill that Brian's car struggled against. Some other cars were already waiting for us. A full moon shone between clouds, and a slight breeze caused colored leaves to drift across the unkempt lawn. The white paint peeled off the front of the stone walls, and most of the dark windows were broken. This place looked like it came straight out of a bad horror movie. At least I would be getting my Halloween fill this season. We parked with the other 2 cars, and Brian started to introduce everyone. There would be 7 people in total. Kayla, a girl he's known since high school, waved when we walked over. Ryan worked with Brian at their last job. He didn't appear overly excited about the entire idea. I got the sense he was somehow bribed to be here. Liam and his sister arrived next in the same car. They were both tall, and within seconds of meeting them, I got the impression they could be friends with anyone. The last person arrived a few minutes after them, saying how they almost got lost. Okay, good. We're all here. Everyone wearing proper footwear? There are a lot of rusty nails and broken glass inside. How about flashlights? Brian started looking over the group. Most of us had our cell phones for flashlights. He didn't want us using up our batteries, so he handed out small pen lights as well as some walkie-talkies. I was impressed by all of this. Even though I was only working with him for a short time, I didn't have a very high opinion of his work ethic. When he was motivated, it seemed like he thought things through. Are you going to split up and explore in groups? Kayla asked, sounding nervous. No, not if you don't want to. It's up to you guys. I brought the radios just in case. This place is a maze, so it's easy to get lost. Our new friend Benny here will be recording for us, but it would be nice if you guys could as well if you do decide to go off alone. I winced at the nickname. I've asked him 100 times not to call me that. Just Ben was fine. I used my flashlight to look over the side of the building and noticed something I hadn't before. From the tops of the windows, a blackness had curled up and stained the insides. A familiar smell came to the air. Was there a fire here? I asked. For some odd reason, Brian's face grew a little pale. I heard there was one, but it was put out before too much damage was done. I think sometimes homeless people camp here. I don't know why he sounded a little stressed over my question. I ignored it, and Kayla spoke up. Are we going to come across anyone inside? She said, a little frightened over the idea. Nah, a new shelter opened up, remember? Why would they camp in this place when they have access to warm meals and a free bed? Brian shrugged. Well, just in case, no one should go off alone. Let's get everyone's numbers, you know, if we drop the radio or something, Liam suggested. For the next few minutes, we did just that. I realized that most of these people knew Brian, but this was the first time they were meeting each other. I wasn't the odd person out in this group. Everyone ready? Brian asked, and got a positive response. A cold wind blew, almost ushering our group inside. An odd feeling came into my stomach as I suddenly wanted to turn back and go home. I shook my head, refusing to back out now. Besides, Brian was my ride. Lifting the handheld camera, I followed behind the group, unaware of what waited for us inside. The lobby was massive, with cracked tiles. It opened to a large set of wooden stairs that branched out, leading to opposite sides of the building. Our footsteps echoed through the room. Liam and his sister walked ahead of the group to the front desk. He leaned over, looking through the papers that were left behind. They must have closed down suddenly. I think these files have some personal information that shouldn't be left out for anyone to see. He commented, placing the dirty papers back down. It is weird. I've never heard of this place. One of the group commented. Yeah, you would think it would be a huge local legend or something. Another person chimed in. Which side do you want to start with? Ryan asked, ignoring the previous questions. Right. Left. Two sets of voices came at the same time. After a quick game of rock, paper, scissors, it was decided we would go left. From the looks of things, the rooms for the staff were on the right, and the patients were on the left. Any treatment rooms were in the basement, and the common areas were on the first floor. It would be impossible for us to look at the entire building in one night. Let's look at the left side and then go to the basement for the good stuff, Brian said, and we all agreed. We made our way upstairs, the group chattering away, ruining the atmosphere. I wasn't overly upset over that. Sure, I did want a spooky night out, but after nearly an hour of recording banter and silly antics of the group, I found myself preferring this kind of night over what I expected. Each room we peeked into was more or less the same. Ruined beds with some personal items left behind. It looked like everyone just got up and left. Each item is slowly being overtaken by the elements. Weird how there isn't any graffiti, I commented as we walked down a hallway. Another burst of wind blew through the broken windows, creating a ghastly sound that made some of the group shudder. Oh, you're right, Kayla agreed, looking at the bare and painted walls. A strong smell of something burnt came with the wind, and I found myself covering my nose with my hand. Liam noticed and sniffled the air. What's up? Are you feeling sick? He asked. I shook my head, looking around, trying to find the source of the smell. No, it's like something is on fire. Am I the only one who... I stopped as I looked over the group. It was dark, but with our flashlights, I could see everyone. I counted 6 people. 6. I started looking inside rooms, trying to find the last person. We had been introduced. and yet I couldn't remember their name to call out for them. "Are you sure you're not feeling sick?" Liam asked, watching me as I darted between rooms. A cold fear came to my chest as I pushed by him and opened a door. Inside was a large operating room, tools scattered along the floor, an old, massive light hanging overhead, a stained steel table. I left the door open and went to the room next to it. A doctor's office was inside, with an overturned bookcase and files littering the floor. "I thought we were in the patient's living area. Why is there an operating room here?" I asked, unable to hide the stress in my voice. I saw the small group glance over, faces pale at the realization. "Maybe," Kayla started but couldn't think of an answer. "Wasn't there 7 of us?" I finally asked. They all appeared confused. Liam slowly nodded and glanced down at his phone. That was right. We all got each other's numbers. The last person's name should be there. I took out mine, looking at the small contact list. 6 new numbers. I raised my head, meeting Liam's eyes. He was as scared as I felt. "I think it's time to leave," I told them sternly. He took hold of his sister's hand, ready to drag her out if needed. "Why, because you can't count? It was always the 6 of us, right?" Brian said. I narrowed my eyes at him. For some odd reason, it sounded like he was trying to convince us. Was this a prank they were playing on the new guy? No. I remember adding 7 contacts to my phone. It hadn't left my pocket. Someone couldn't delete it, and everyone here wasn't friends with each other. Only Brian. Movement at the end of the hallway caught my eye. Lifting the flashlight, the beam fell on a dirty gown. The figure hunched over, skin black and cracked. Lifting its head, it looked at us with bright orange eyes as the smell of smoke and burnt meat filled the hallway. Prank or not, I wasn't going to risk it. "Run!" I shouted, and it caused everyone to move at once. I heard screaming as we stumbled over each other. In the chaos, I dropped the handheld camera, but I didn't care. Brian did. He scooped it up and then darted inside one of the side rooms. My vision was blurred as I ran as fast as I could, trying to get out of this place. No matter how many times we turned a corner in the hallway, we couldn't seem to find the stairs. If something was following us, I didn't see it, but I smelled something burnt close by. "This isn't getting us anywhere," Liam said and pulled his sister into a side room. We followed him, out of breath and face stained with sweat. The room was small and could barely hold all of us. It looked like a solitary confinement cell with scratches on the cement wall. "When we calm down, we'll find a window and get out that way," Liam explained after gasping for some air. I looked around to see who was inside the room. Kayla, Liam, his sister, and me. We were missing a person. "Dang it," I hissed and checked my phone. His name was still there, which was good. "Did you see where Ryan went?" I asked the group. Each appeared confused over the question, almost as if they didn't know who I was talking about. "I almost forgot him," Kayla whispered, clearly scared of what was going on. Liam gripped his sister's hand tighter. We didn't understand what was going on, only that we needed to get the hell out of here. "Okay, we really need to find a window," he said, and we all agreed. Thankfully, the next room had one. It was broken, and Liam wrapped his hand in a torn bedsheet to remove the rest of the pieces around the edges to make it safer. He put his head through, looking out with his flashlight, gauging the distance. "We're on the 2nd floor, I think," he told us. "Won't we, break something if we jump? Can't we find a bedsheet to tie together, or—" Kayla offered. We had closed the door behind us. A sudden scratching noise came from it as the door handle started to turn. I threw my body against the door, keeping it shut as a burst of heat came from the other side. "Better a broken leg than whatever is outside," I said, straining against the force trying to get in. She nodded, and Liam went to try to fit through the window. To his horror, his shoulders were too large. Ducking out, he took hold of his sister and held her through. His face was full of stress as he lowered her out. She promised that since she was a cheerleader in high school, she knew how to fall properly. He took a few deep breaths, then finally let go of her hand, letting her body drop off into the darkness. The rattling and the heat on the other side of the door disappeared when she did. Liam stood by the window, an almost calm expression coming over his face. He turned to us, looking over the other two people in the room. "Who's going to go first?" he offered. Dread came to my stomach. My shoulder hurt from keeping the door shut. I pushed back the pain to ask a question I hoped had a good answer. "Shouldn't we see if your sister landed all right?" I asked him, my voice strained. Liam's expression turned to confusion. "Sister?" he asked. I found myself sliding down the wooden door. Kayla choked back sobs and looked away from Liam. Going out a window wasn't an option, and we just lost a person because of it. Liam hadn't fully forgotten her, but her number was no longer in my contact list. Maybe there was a slight chance she would be all right. We just needed to get out of here. "All right, let's keep going." I finally stood up. "Where?" Kayla asked, defeated. "Why don't we stay here? People will notice that we're missing." I crossed my arms, wanting more than anything for a rescue party to come and save the day, no matter how much I wanted to believe that I already knew it would be impossible. "Where are we? I mean, what's the name of this asylum?" I asked them. Shock, then sheer horror came over their faces. They didn't know. No matter how hard we tried, we could not remember the name of this place. That meant that no one would be coming to save us. As hard as it was to accept, something natural was happening. "I agree with Ben. I think if we try hard enough, we can get out of here," Liam said and walked over to Kayla, taking her hand. I did the same, trying to give her a comforting expression. "From what I've gathered, once we separate, we forget about each other. We won't let you go," I told her, trying to smile. Tears were in her eyes. With a deep inhale, she squeezed our hands, a new determination in her eyes. "I'm not some scared little girl. I won't let you guys be kidnapped," she huffed. I was glad that I was with these two. I swore that no matter what, we would get out of here. Slowly, I opened the door into the dark hallway, keeping a hand around Kayla's waist. Liam shone his flashlight down the hallway. A dark shape was a few feet away from us. It didn't react, so we wisely decided to go the other way. We walked down the empty hallway, with closed doors on each side. I kept looking behind us at the figure to make sure it wasn't going to chase after us. I glanced at the room numbers and noticed we were now on the 3rd floor. "I have an idea," I whispered to them. We shuffled into a room, closed the door, then I opened it, peeking out into the new hallway. Every time we went inside a room and left, we ended up in a different part of the building. Even some rooms might be inside different areas, like the operating room appearing on the 2nd floor. Maybe if we go in and out of enough rooms, we might end up on the 1st floor, I told them. Liam nodded, glad that we had some sort of plan. I have no idea how long we moved like that, ducking between rooms in a useless attempt to get outside. While inside a patient's room, Kayla paused at a dusty dresser. "It's a cell phone number," she pointed out. Someone had recently written a number in the dust on the dresser. Had Brian been here? I checked my phone and saw it wasn't a number on my contact list. Was it from someone we were missing? Before I could enter, an overpowering smell came into the room. Our backs had been turned to the bed. We moved too late. A hand came down, gripping Liam's shoulder so hard it made him crumble to the ground. The creature was a thin creature with charred flesh sticking to its frame. Kayla screamed as a burned patch started to spread along Liam's shoulder. melting away part of his shirt. My body froze as I met the creature's eyes. My entire soul was suddenly filled with so much sorrow I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Tears sting my eyes, and I was positive we would have died there if it weren't for the third person in the room. Kayla found a broken piece of a wooden chair in the corner. She grabbed the thickest part of it and swung it like a bat. It shattered on the creature's skull, snapping the head back so far that I thought it would come off. It screamed and then disappeared into the floor, leaving its attacker panting with a broken piece of wood in her hands. I went to see how Liam was. It took a minute before he was able to stand up. The burn was not as bad as it could have been. "Thanks," we told Kayla, a little bit in shock over the outburst. "Let's just find a weapon and just smash the crap out of the scary guys in here," she said, her green eyes shining in the darkness. I now would much rather deal with whatever monsters were in the dark than ever have her angry at me. "Well," I started, and didn't need to finish that thought. Countless darkened, burned hands came from the walls reaching for us. As much as Kayla wanted to fight back, she was no match for this. We grabbed hold of her, and the three of us hauled back into the hallway. We almost ran over another one of those darkened creatures. It reached out with thin arms, hands like claws ready to rip into flesh. We avoided it, and ended up weaving between more of those things. We were on the move, and stopping meant being overtaken by a swarm of hands that wanted to rip flesh from bones. As we ran, I kept seeing the same cell phone number written along the walls and on the floors. I didn't have time to stop and call it. We crashed into another operating room, shortly realizing our mistake. So many of those burnt bodies squirmed through the only exit. Kayla grabbed an IV pole to keep the mass back as Liam used the steel table to create some distance. A hand landed on my wrist. I grabbed a scalpel from the table, ready to bring it down on my attacker. Our eyes met, and for that single moment, I wasn't looking at a monster. Instead, I stared at a scared young girl asking for help. The blade dropped from my hands. As if in a trance, I reached out for her, barely aware of the burning coming from where her hand touched my wrist. I suddenly wanted to hold her, to tell her I would get her out of this place, that things would be all right. A hand took hold of the back of my shirt. I found myself falling as the floor gave out, the three of us tumbling down somewhere unknown. I must have been knocked out. I felt a warm hand on my cheek and a voice asking if I was all right. Opening my eyes, I saw we were in an empty room with a ceiling so high I couldn't see the top. It felt more like a pit than a room. Sitting up, I saw Kayla sitting next to me. Some scratches and bruises, but she was all right. Liam wasn't doing so well. The burn on his shoulder spread. He sat against the wall, barely able to keep his eyes open. Another person was in the room with us. Brian was on his back, blood on his forehead, eyes closed as he clutched the camera as if his life depended on it. A large steel door took up most of the left wall. I could hear inhuman yowling from the other side as it got closer. "I don't know how to get out of here," Kayla admitted. I took her hand, wishing I had the answers. The way out wouldn't just fall into our laps, right? "I found this when we went here." She nodded towards a piece of yellowing paper nailed to the stone wall. It had the same cell phone number she saw before. We looked at each other, deciding if it was worth the risk. From the sounds of things, and the heat coming from the steel door, we didn't have a lot of time to think about it. I pulled out my phone, thankful that I still had power left. I did try 911 first. Nothing. I then tried the mystery number. After a few rings, someone finally answered. "Took you long enough," the person snapped. We all jumped because the voice was inside the room with us. I got between the newcomer and Kayla, uncertain if I could defend her from them. No matter how hard I looked them over, I could not figure out their gender. They were thin with messy red hair cut at their shoulders. A tight, black sleeveless workout shirt clings to every muscle and shows off a flat chest, as well as how thin they were. A set of baggy khakis didn't match the shirt. Neither did a pair of slim, high-heeled shoes. One was standing on Brian's chest. "Who?" I asked, stunned at the newcomer's appearance. "Jake," they responded. "Jake is a little hot," Kayla whispered in my ear. I gave her a raised eyebrow but didn't say anything. She'd been through enough tonight. She didn't need me judging her. "Get up." Without warning, Jake kicked Brian hard enough to send his body rolling. He gasped, clutching his sore side. He spotted the camera he'd let go of and then scrambled for it. Jake reached it first, the heels coming down, smashing it to pieces. Brian yelled, ready to attack her. A strong leg came out, knocking him senseless. I sat, not wanting to get in between any of this. From the looks of things, these two had met before. "Hurry up and get us out of here. I'll give you anyone here that you want," Brian said between bloody teeth. Jake crossed her arms, a nasty look on her face. She had a scar on one side of her lip that made it look like a gruesome smile, even while frowning. "You've done this before," Liam struggling to speak. I felt so stupid. Brian had lured all of us here for what? For footage for his dumb YouTube channel? He already knew how to travel through rooms to avoid those monsters, and he already planned on calling Jake, offering whoever was left to save his own skin. "He has. I offered to save him, and this guy paid with his girlfriend," Jake said, curling a piece of bright red hair between her fingers. "She was a cutie. I guess he thought he could pull the same thing twice." "Kayla's cute. Take her," Brian said, standing up only to get his legs swept out from under him. "I do this kind of thing for fun. Listening to your whiny demands isn't fun. Besides, you weren't the one who called me, so I don't really need to listen to whatever you want," she said, crossing her arms again, and her eyes landed in my direction. My heart started to race. We could get out of here. I just needed to deal with this childish weirdo. "You can do whatever you want with me. Just save..." I started, and Jake gave another scowl. "Boring," she hissed, turning her nose up to my offer. I looked over at Liam, knowing he didn't have a lot of time left. Even if there weren't monsters at the door ready to break it down, he needed help fast. "There were 7 of us," I started, and Jake glanced over, almost interested. "I don't remember the 7th, but I know Ryan's name and that Liam was here with his sister. Are they still alive?" I asked, hoping for answers. Jake appearing out of thin air, and her overall vibe gave me the impression she wasn't normal. Maybe she knew more about this place than we did. "Yes, the people who die here become a part of this place. They are wiped from existence, like how all the patients were. This isn't a real place. It's an amalgamation of the suffering of the ones who died because of the system they were forced into," Jake explained, and sounded almost normal. "I assume it lets certain people know about it because it wants to lure in new victims." I nodded, then frowned. They weren't all fully forgotten. Didn't some of them have families on the outside? Even being buried in an unmarked grave or burned. There must be someone out there who remembers some of these people. I was mostly talking to myself. The creatures who chased us weren't monsters, just someone who had been hurt by the real monsters. "Is there any way to help them?" I asked, and it caused Jake to burst out into cruel laughter. "I'm reconsidering your offer. You cannot help them here. You'll only be dragging them into their pain. The only way to help is to make the public aware of the abuse people suffered in these systems. To do that, you need to get out. Now, what are you going to offer me to make it worth my time?" She stood tall, hands on her hips. With a smug look on her face, she held all the cards and I needed to figure out what she wanted. "You can do whatever you want with me," I said, and got a nasty look as a response. I then pointed a finger over at Brian. "And you can have him," I finally said. He shot up, bloodshot face red with rage. "You can't just hand me over like that," he shouted, looking as if he might strangle me. "Jake might eat me or worse. I'm offering myself to save all of you. You guys owe me your lives. Since you owe me, I'm offering you as well," I said, only making Brian even more furious. "That's stupid. It doesn't make sense," he snapped, stomping a foot. "You're right, and I like stupid. Okay, done deal. I assume you want those other two. Hang on." Without warning, Brian fell through the floor with a yelp. Jake followed after leaving the room, silent for a few seconds. Suddenly, Liam shot up, face a mixture of pain and confusion. "My sister, where is she? I dropped her, but..." Kayla went over to him and helped him back to the ground. Jake appeared without the other two people who were missing. She told us they were outside and that she just needed to get us free next. "You'd better be worth it. This will take a lot out of me." She huffed and walked towards the door, her heels clicking. "Get ready to run." With some effort, I got Liam on my back. There was no other option. Kayla steadied herself. She knew that if I was falling behind, I wanted her to leave us. I would rather one person get out of this place alive. Jake threw open the door to a hell on the other side. Countless bodies were crammed into each other, screaming and reaching for warm, living bodies. A burst of flames shot out from Jake's mouth, her hair glowing as bright as the flames in front of her. The screaming grew louder as the bodies caught fire. My eyes water and skin sting from the heat. We pressed on, knowing we would die if we stopped. Jake cackled as she ran, each heel denting the floor from the force of her footsteps. A sleek body darted around the rooms, flames coming from her mouth and hands setting fire to anything that tried to attack us. We ran hard, my body straining against the weight on my back. I refused to leave Liam behind. We reached a set of stairs that felt endless. A fiery, cackling maniac led the way as so many hands clamored after us, nipping at our heels. We finally arrive at the lobby, the end in sight. A sea of bodies came flooding down the stairs, threatening to engulf us. Jake put herself between us, feet firmly planted, ready to set forth the largest blast of flames that could take down the entire building. Kayla got through the doors first, followed her, and set Liam down on the cold steps. She shouted as I turned on my heels to go back inside. I'd seen something in that crowd of crying flesh I refused to leave behind. Jake was already unleashing a sea of flames. I pushed through it, feeling the heat on my flesh and my shirt burning away. My hands reached out into the bodies, taking hold of a small hand. With the last of my strength, I pulled the thin person into my arms, and the heat overtook everything. I woke up on the cool grass, a foot painfully nudging my side. Opening my eyes, I saw a brightening sky and Kayla's worried face. Jake already took everyone to be treated. "I thought you weren't going to wake up," she explained. I sat up with my entire body in pain. I wasn't as burned as I thought, mostly a sunburn on my arms. Next to me was a human-shaped bundle wrapped in a dirty sheet. The building was missing, leaving the hillside empty. "I couldn't leave her behind," I told Kayla, placing a hand on the bundle next to me. "Soft boys like you tend to get swept up into places like these. You're lucky I could pull you out of it," Jake said, very annoyed. "Thank you," I told her. Her face flushed in a way I wasn't expecting. "You're lucky I'm so nice. In fact, I'm so nice I'll take the body you saved and make sure she's buried properly." I was glad for the offer. I doubted I could show up with a random corpse and ask the police to identify her without there being a lot of questions. What do I owe you?" I asked, almost scared of the answer. Jake paused, thinking almost as if she wasn't sure. She made a scene of muttering to herself and puttering around. "Pancakes," she finally said. Kayla and I looked at each other with a matching expression. "There is a breakfast place I've been wanting to try, but it's only open in the mornings. I never wake up before noon. Buy me some and bring them over, and we're even." Jake nodded. "That's it?" I said, mentally kicking myself after I asked. "What, did you want me to, eat you or something? You don't have an ounce of meat on your bones, and it would take too long to fatten you up." With that last comment, she tossed a set of keys into my lap that belonged to Brian's car. "Thank you," I told her again, and she stuck her tongue out as if I said something disgusting. I still had her cell phone number, so we could figure out the pancake day and how many she wanted. I might be stuck delivering breakfast to this weirdo for a long while, and I was perfectly alright with that. Yes, it probably sounds insane. I should start with the backstory, but God, how hard is it to remember the simple, happy times before everything that happened? I met my wife Catherine when she was 24 and I was 28. We lived in a small town in Kentucky. You'd have trouble finding it even with a map, and the population was tiny. Everyone knew each other. I'd worked as an electrician all my life. First at a factory, then I started my own small business. Repairs, wiring, private jobs. My love life had never really worked out until I met her. She worked as an elementary school teacher, smiled at every child, was kind and polite to everyone. My Catherine was the only ray of light in the darkness around me. I loved her for her simplicity. She could find joy in the most ordinary things. Morning coffee, the smell of wet grass, a cheap movie on the couch. We didn't have much money, but we had peace, a home, a dog, and that feeling that everything was right, that everything would be fine. I spent evenings fixing things while she wrote lesson plans or knitted. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, listening to crickets, or stay up all night talking about everything and nothing, thinking about children and what we'd name them. Back then it felt like life had finally found its meaning. The problems began maybe 2 months ago. At first, small things. She started having trouble sleeping, then began looking at me strangely, as if something in my face disturbed her. I asked if everything was okay and she laughed. "Sorry, just tired. The kids at school are driving me crazy." Gradually, though, I can't even say exactly when it got worse. She slept less, not because she had insomnia, but because she was afraid to fall asleep. I asked her what was wrong, but she said she was fine. Still, when we lay together, she'd suddenly get up and go into another room, returning only at dawn. She started having nightmares, but never really told me what they were. One day I lost my temper. You have to understand, I was just worried about my wife. From the lack of sleep, she started to look worse. Dark circles under her eyes, red eyes, pale skin. She lost weight. And every time I tried to help, she pushed me away. So I sat her down across from me and directly asked what she was dreaming about. She was silent for a long time, trembling and glancing at me furtively, as if she was afraid. And then when tears began to roll down her cheeks, she whispered, "There's a man in my dreams. God, I'm so scared, Tom." I went to hug her, and when I reached for her, she flinched, as if I'd frightened her. After that, things seemed to get better, or so I thought. How wrong I was. She used to ask how my day went, but now she just stared out the window. With each passing day, she spoke to me less and less, her words short and dry. and then she'd go to the bathroom or kitchen for some errands, closing the door behind her. And when it wasn't just the silence, her eyes had changed. If before they were green, emerald-like, full of life and love, now her gaze made my spine so cold. There wasn't anger or hatred there. No, it was something closer to mistrust. Wariness, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Over the next week I began to feel anxious, a strange burning under my skin, as if something was wrong, but I couldn't tell where the crack was until I realized. She was studying me. When I drank coffee, I could feel her eyes on me. I'd look up and she'd immediately turn away, pretending to slice fruit, but her fingers trembled and the knife froze halfway to the board. I'd step outside for a smoke, and when I turned around, I'd see her peeking through the curtain, then she'd instantly close it. When I showered, I'd catch her watching me, studying my body, then she'd run away. She started doing it even while I slept. She almost stopped talking to me, instead writing something in a notebook and hiding it as soon as I entered the room. Photos began to disappear from their frames. She'd talk on the phone with someone, but hang up the moment I came in. I made an appointment with a psychologist for us, but she refused, said she was afraid to be near me. It all happened so suddenly. It seemed just yesterday we were stargazing in each other's arms. And now this. The strangeness grew every day. Sometimes she asked me to sleep on the couch. I agreed, hoping it would calm her, but it was useless. Her paranoia only worsened. It got to the point where, when I tried to hug her, she screamed, "Don't come near me," and flinched as if I'd hit her. After one of those nights, I decided I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant taking her to a doctor afterward. I pretended to be asleep when she stood in the hallway. Then she slowly approached soft, careful steps. She stopped at the foot of the bed, and for several seconds there was a dead silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. I could feel her watching, not just watching, comparing. That's when I became truly terrified, a cold dread twisting inside me as my wife became something I couldn't recognize. Then the bed shifted slightly. She sat down on the edge. The air grew heavy. I could feel her stare physically, like pressure on my skin. Then her cold fingers gently touched my wrist, held it for a few seconds, then quickly let go, as if burned, and whispered, "Pulse faster than Tom's." My heart clenched so hard I nearly twitched. She leaned closer. I could hear her breathing against my face, short, shaky. She smelled of lavender and something sour that made goosebumps crawl down my back. Her lips barely moved. I remember clearly. Tom had a small scar right here. She touched my cheek. But you don't. I clenched my teeth to keep from gasping. Those few seconds of silence lasted an eternity. What scar? I never had a scar on my cheek. I'd know if I did. I wanted to sink into the ground and scream all at once, but I kept lying still until I heard a choked sob and her fading footsteps. The door slammed. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding furiously. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, too afraid to close my eyes. In the morning I went to work early, dreading the hours until my shift ended. That evening, over dinner, I said, "Kate, we need to talk. What's going on?" She gripped her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white, then looked at me dead in the eye. "Tom, you've been acting strange." "What do you mean?" "I don't know, sometimes you look different. Sometimes your voice sounds wrong. You even smell different." I didn't know what to say. My head was chaos, and somehow I just laughed. "Kate, maybe you're just imagining things." "I don't know, Tom." My eyes fell on the knife rack. There was a clean strip of dust where the largest kitchen knife should have been the one we used for everything. Bread, meat, anything. I distinctly remembered it being there before that night. My heart slammed into my throat with a primal panic. I looked at Kate, and she was staring right at me. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. It hit me then that my wife might be planning to kill me. The next morning she left for work, and I, like a caged animal, started searching the house. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. I know I should have just left, or taken her to a hospital. But she's my wife. I love her. She has to see that I am me. I tore through the apartment, frantic, desperate to find something, anything that would help me understand what was happening to her. And I did. After about an hour, in the back of the closet behind a pile of sweaters, I found her wooden box. Old, slightly cracked. The lid was ajar, and when I opened it, a thick notebook fell into my hands. It smelled of coffee and sweat. Her initials on the cover, written in her neat cursive. My heart froze as I realized it was the diary she'd been hiding from me. The paper bent under my fingers, her handwriting familiar but this time jagged, shaky, the page stained with what looked like tears. He's sleeping. I stand by the bed and watch. He looks like Tom, but he's not. Tom had a scar on his left hand, from that accident by the river. This one's skin is smooth. He smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something replaced him. I keep counting days, marking steps. If the real Tom, my husband, is alive, where is he? A wave of nausea rose in my throat. With each page, her handwriting grew more erratic. I tested his speech. He says I love you in the same tone, but without warmth. Not like before. Tom smelled of vanilla, but this one smells of dust and cheap cologne. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My knees trembled. The air around me tightened like a noose. I flipped to the last page. I can't let this thing stay in our house. It wears his smile, his name. I tried talking to it, begging, but it just smiled and said all the right words. It didn't defend itself, maybe because it isn't afraid. Its right hand twitches when it lies. I could have killed it today, but for some reason I couldn't. I know I have to. For Tom, I won't let some monster wear his skin. My hands were slick with sweat. My whole body was sweating, even though the room was cold. I placed the diary on the bed and sat down, trying to process everything I'd just read. An accident? God, she was exaggerating. All that came out of it was a concussion and some bruised ribs. I stayed in the hospital for about a week. Yeah, 7 days. Then my phone rang, making me jump. It was Sheriff Martin, a kind old man I'd known for years. Tom, everything all right over there? Catherine called. Said someone's living in your house pretending to be her husband. I froze. What did you say? Says you're not you. I've known her for years. Always seems stable. Domestic quarrel, huh? No, just stress. She's tired. Evening came slowly. I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, looking at an old photograph, the one that used to sit on our mantel before all this. Catherine and I by the lake, smiling, her arms around me, the sun so bright that day we had to squint. I stared at us, at the little details, her blonde hair catching the light, her hand around mine, the green shimmer in our eyes. It felt like a lifetime ago. When the door creaked open, I nearly jumped. My wife's, if I can still call her that, steps were slow and tired, her bag thudding softly on the floor. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her hair a mess. I stood holding the diary. Kate, we need to talk. She looked at me warily, like a trapped animal sensing a snare. What's that in your hand? Her voice was even, but something trembled in it. I found this. I need to understand what's happening, I said, showing her the diary. Catherine froze. For a moment I thought she'd break down crying, but instead she slowly stepped closer, looking straight into my face, her cold breath brushing against my skin. So what did you figure out, Tom? That I'm crazy? You think I've lost my mind, don't you? No, you wrote that I've been replaced. That I don't have a scar. She turned away, her lips pressed tight. Tom had one. We even joked it made him look tougher. Listen, sweetheart. I took a step closer, a strange knot tightening in my gut. I'm the same man. I remember everything. How we met, the candles at our wedding, how you laughed when we watched comedies, what you said about that stupid show when we finished it. I remember everything, Catherine. It's me. She stared at me, unblinking, her shoulders trembling as if she were freezing. I looked into her eyes, and there was something there, pain and horror mixed together, as if I stood before her as someone both familiar and wrong. You say it like you've rehearsed it, she whispered. Because it's true. I stepped closer, my voice cracking into a shout. What do I have to do for you to believe me? What? Catherine said nothing, just breathed heavily like she was fighting herself, staring into my eyes. Then she suddenly backed away step by step, toward her bag. I didn't realize what was happening at first. She bent down, as if for a handkerchief, and in the next moment, I saw the glint of metal. A knife. The missing one. Kate? I breathed, disbelieving. Catherine, put it down. Stop. Stop pretending, you monster. I managed half a step toward her. She raised her hand. At first, I thought she was only threatening me. Panic tightened my fists. I wanted to yell, to grab her shoulders, to make her listen, but then a strike. Burning pain slashed through my chest. Everything went white. The last thing I saw was her face so familiar, twisted by terror and despair at once. She stood over me, her hand trembling, her lips whispering something like, Tom, where are you, my love? And then everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital. At first, nothing but fog, then the smell of antiseptic, the faint beep of a monitor, unfamiliar voices. I tried to move my head. Pain shot throughout my body. The doctor explained I'd lost a lot of blood but somehow survived. The knife missed my heart by an inch. Catherine? Catherine had run away. I listened, not believing any of it was real. A couple of days later, Martin came by. I told him everything about the knife, the diary, her thinking I wasn't me. He listened, frowning, taking notes. When he finished and was about to leave, he turned back. Didn't expect this from Catherine. Don't worry, we'll find her. When you're discharged, come by my place. I got some Cuban cigars from a friend. We'll relax a bit. Without thinking, I said, I don't smoke. He frowned, about to say something, but then just nodded and left, closing the door behind him. For several minutes I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. Then I noticed a small mirror in the corner of the room. I looked at my reflection and froze. My face was pale, my lips dry. But that wasn't what caught my attention. Interesting. Can eyes change color from green to blue? How old must he be now? 8? 9? I stared at my neighbor, unsure what she was asking. She read the confusion on my face. You're cute, little guy. I saw him biking down the lane earlier. He must be old enough for grade 4 now, right? Mrs. Babbage was a bit on the older side, but I never thought she had shown signs of dementia. Not until now. I wasn't exactly sure what to say. She proceeded to stare at me, tilting her head, as if I was the one misremembering. I awkwardly opened my mouth. Oh, right, my little guy. She brightened. Yes, he must be in grade 4, right? Sure. I mean, yes, he is. What a cute little guy, she said, and returned to watering her flowers. It was an odd, slightly sad moment. I wondered if her husband had seen glimmers of this too. I could only hope that this was a momentary blip, and not the sign of anything Alzheimer's related. I took the rest of my groceries out of my car and entered home. I had a long day of teaching, and I just wanted to sit back, unwind, and watch something light on TV. But as soon as I took off my first shoe, I smelled it. Something burning on the stove. Something burning with lots of cheese on it. The hell? I dashed over to the kitchen and almost fell down. Partially because I was wearing only one shoe, but also because there was a scrawny little boy frying Kraft dinner. I let out a half scream, but very quickly I composed myself into the same assertive adult who taught at a university. What? Excuse me. Who are you? What are you doing here? The boy's blonde, willow-like hair whipped around in his face as he looked at me with equal surprise. Papa, what do you mean? I'm here. I'm here. He was a scared, confused child, and I couldn't quite place the bizarre inflection of his words. Do you want some KD, Papa? Have some. Have some. Was that a Russian accent? It took me a second to realize he was wearing an oversized shirt that looked just like mine. Was he wearing my clothes? I held out my palms like I would at a lecture, my standard, everyone settle down gesture, and cleared my throat. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, or what this is. The boy widened his eyes, still frightened by my intensity. He stirred the food with a wooden spoon. It's KD, Papa, your favorite, chili cheese kind. Don't you remember? His name was Dmitri, and he claimed to be my son. Apparently at some point there had been a mother, but he didn't remember much about her. He only remembered me. You've been Papa my whole life. My whole life, Papa. I tried having a sit-down conversation. In fact, I tried to have many sit-down conversations where I explained to Dmitri that would be impossible, but it always ended with him clutching me with impassioned tears, begging me to remember him. The confusion only got worse when my mother called. How is my grandson doing? She asked. I didn't know how to reply. The conversation grew awkward and tense until eventually I clarified my whole predicament. Mom, what are you talking about? I don't have a son. I've never had a son. My mother gasped a little, then laughed and scolded me, saying I shouldn't joke around like that, because of course I always had a son, a smart little guy who will be celebrating 9 this weekend. I hung up. I stood petrified in my own kitchen, staring at the strange, expectant Slavic child. For the next 10 minutes all I could do was ask where his parents were, and he just continued to act frightened, like any authentic kid might, and replied with the same question. How did you forget me, Papa? My method wasn't getting me anywhere, so I decided to play along. I cleared my head with a shot of espresso. I told him my brain must have been scrambled from overworking, and I apologized for not remembering I was his father. He brightened immediately. It's okay, Papa. It's okay. He gave me a hug. You always work so hard. The tension dropped further as Dmitri finished making the noodles and served himself some. I politely declined and watched him eat, and he watched me watch him eat. So you're okay now? You're not angry? His accent was so odd. No, I said. I'm not angry. I was just a little scrambled. His eyes shimmered, looking more expectant. So we can be normal now? A chill trickled down my neck. I didn't really know what to say, but for whatever reason, I did not want to say, yes, we can be normal now, because this was not normal. Far from it. This child was not my son. He started playing with his food and quivered a little, like a worried mouse seeking reassurance. Everything will be fine, I eventually said. No need to stress. Enjoy your noodles. To my shock and dismay, I discovered that Dmitri also had his own room. My home office had somehow been replaced by a barren, clay-walled chamber filled with linen curtains, old wooden toys, and a simple bed. The smell of bread and earth wafted throughout. I watched him play with his blocks and spinning tops for about an hour before he started to yawn and say he wanted to go to sleep. It was the strangest thing, tucking him in. He didn't want to switch to pajamas or anything. He just sort of hopped into his straw bed and asked me to hold his hand. Dimitri's fingers were cold, slightly clammy little things. It was very bizarre, comforting him like my own son, but it appeared to work. He softened and lay still. He didn't ask for any lullaby or bedtime story. He just wanted to hold my hand for a minute. "Thank you, Papa. I'm so glad you're here. So glad you can be my Papa. Good night." I inched my way out of the room and watched him through the crack of his door. At about 9:30, he gave small, childlike snores. He had fallen asleep. Cautiously, I called Pat, my coworker with whom I shared close contact. She had the same reaction as my mother. "Harlan, of course you have a son. From your marriage to Svetlana." "My marriage to who?" "You met her in Moscow when you were touring Europe." It was true that I had guest lectured 15 years ago, across the UK, Germany, and Russia. I was awarded a grant for it, but I only stayed in Moscow for 3 days. "I never met anyone named Svetlana." "Don't be weird, Harlan. Come on." Pat's conviction was very disturbing. "You and Svetlana were together for many years." "We were? How many?" "Look, I know the divorce was hard, but you shouldn't pretend your ex-wife doesn't exist." "I'm not pretending. I'm being serious. I don't remember her." "Then get some sleep." I sipped on my second espresso of the night. "But I have slept. I'm fine." "Well, then I don't get what this joke is. Knock it off. It's creepy." "I'm not joking." "I'll see you tomorrow for the birthday." "Birthday?" "Yes, your son's birthday." "Jesus Christ." "Good night, Harlan. Get some sleep." I didn't sleep that night. My efforts were spent scouring the filing cabinets and drawers throughout my house. I had credit card bills covering school supplies, kids' clothing shops, and costlier groceries. I even had pictures of Dimitri hung around the walls from various ages. It's like everything was conforming to this new reality. The harder I looked for clues to disprove my fatherhood, the more evidence I found confirming it. It was Dimitri who woke me up off the living room couch and said Uncle Boris was here. Uncle Boris? I peeked through the window and could see a very large blond man smiling back at me. Behind him was a gaggle of other relatives, all speaking Russian to each other. "Hello, Harlan." The blond man's voice penetrated past the glass. "We are here for birthday." They all looked excited and motioned to the front door. They were all wearing tunics and leggings, traditional birthday clothes or something. I was completely floored. I didn't know what to do. So I just sort of nodded and subtly slinked back into my kitchen. Dimitri came to pull at my arm. "Come on, Papa, we have to let them in." "I don't know any of them." "Yes, you do, Papa. It's Uncle Boris. It's Uncle Boris." I yanked my hand away. It was one thing to pretend I was the kid's dad for a night. It was quite another to let a group of strangers into my house first thing in the morning. Dimitri frowned. "I'll open the door." "Wait, hold on." I grabbed Dimitri's shoulder. He turned away. "Let go." I tried to pull him back, but then he dragged me into the living room again. Our struggle was on display for everyone outside. Boris looked at me with saucer eyes. Dimitri pulled harder, and I had no choice but to pull harder back. The boy hit his head on a table as he fell. Boris yelled something in Russian. Someone else hollered back. I heard hands trying to wrench open my door. "Dimitri, stop," I said. "Let's just take a minute to—" "You're hurting me, Papa." My front door unlocked. Footsteps barreled inside. I let go of my son and watched 3 large Slavic men enter my house with stern expressions. Dmitri hid behind them. Is everything okay? Boris peered down at me through his tangle of blonde hair. Yes, sorry, I said, struggling to find words. I'm just very confused. Confused? Why were you hitting Dmitri? The little boy pulled on his uncle's arm and whispered something into his ear. Boris' expression furrowed, but before I could speak further, a slender pair of arms pushed aside all the male figures and revealed a woman with unwavering bloodshot eyes. Something in me knew it was her, Svetlana. She wore a draped brown sheet as a dress, with skin so pale I could practically see her sinews and bones. It's like she had some extreme form of albinism. Harlan, she said, somehow breaking my name into 3 syllables. Harlan. I've never been so instinctively afraid of a person in my life. It's like she had weaved herself out of the darkest edges of memory. I saw flashes of her holding my waist in Moscow, outside Red Square, flashes of her lips whispering chants in the shadows of St. Basil's Cathedral. Svetlana held Dmitri's shoulder, then looked up at me. Just tell him it will be normal. Tell him everything will be normal. No, this is not happening. None of this is real. Barefoot and still wearing the same clothes as yesterday, I bolted out the back of my house and hurtled towards my driveway. Before the rest of my new family could realize what was going on, I hopped into my Subaru and stepped on the gas. As I drove away from my house, I looked back into my rearview mirror, and I swear, it didn't look like my house at all. I swear it looked like a thatched roof hut. Back at the university, I walled myself up in my study. I canceled all speaking arrangements for the next week, saying I needed a few personal days. No one in my department knew I had a son. Nothing in my study indicated I had an extended Russian family. When I asked Pat about our phone conversation last night, her response was, "What conversation?" My mom said the same thing. With immense trepidation, I returned to my house the following day, and after setting foot back inside, I knew that everything had reverted back to the way it was before. No more framed pictures of Dmitri, no more alarming photo albums, and that clay-walled room where Dmitri spun tops and slept inside, it was just my home office again. To this day I have no clue what happened during that bizarre September weekend, but doing some of my own research, I'm starting to think I did encounter something in Moscow all those years ago. Some kind of lingering old curse. Or a stray spirit. Or a Chernaya Vedma. A black witch disguised as an ordinary woman. Although I haven't seen any evil things bubble up around my place since, every now and then I do have a conversation with Mrs. Babbage, and she seems to remember my son very well. Such a cute little guy. Always waving hello. Did you know he offered me food once? I think it was Kraft dinner. It started with one small mention from Mrs. Burton, our neighborhood's grandma. My parents were in our backyard doing the garden when she came by with a carrot cake. "Hi, Mrs. Burton," I said. She nodded, smiling, and approached my parents. As I pulled out weed, I overheard them talking about the McField's missing son, the Grover's ugly new lawn that was ruining the image of the neighborhood, and Cormac Stanner's brand new car, which had windows so dark you couldn't see inside. You really should look into joining the Manuscript Book Club. It helped me a lot. Things were so hard after Ben passed away, but I'm so much better now. I had someone to talk to. My life had purpose, she said to my parents in that pleasant, motherly voice. "Thanks, Mrs. Burton. We'll give it a thought," my mom said, taking the carrot cake from her. Mrs. Burton was your regular sweet old lady. She used to live with her husband Ben, but he passed away last year. Poor Mrs. Burton was in absolute anguish for the past year, until she appeared to us, spriteful and lively. I thought that she had recovered and found purpose living alone. My phone vibrated. It was my best friend Zoe. I went into our front porch to return her text. My parents didn't want me talking to Zoe. Street rat, horrible influence on a girl, my dad would often say. We went to the same class from high school until college. She was an orphan and would frequently get in trouble for all sorts of things. Hot wiring a teacher's car and driving it around the school, planting a farting balloon under the teacher's seat, starting food fights, and the list went on. But Zoe was always friendly and protective of me. We became friends after she defended me from a school bully using water balloons. Bored out of my mind. What are you doing? She texted. Not much. Doing the garden with my parents. I was texting her and looking at Mrs. Burton, who returned to her house and took out a chair on her front lawn and sat down. She faced the direction of the Grovers, probably musing over how ugly their new lawn was. We lived in a cul-de-sac. There were around 12 families, including ours. We were the kind of neighborhood where most families are wealthy and have a cared-for lawn and 2 kids. Normal and boring. Things were going well for my family, at least until that day. Our family was on a road trip. We stopped for a pee break. My mom went into a deep bush while my dad stood behind a large boulder. I was on the front seat, typing away at my phone. Jason, my little brother, was in the back seat looking out of the car. Megan, look, a fox with strange ears. Look, it's green. I ignored him. A 5-year-old sees all sorts of things. I shouldn't have. I looked up just in time to see him opening the car door and running outside. It happened in the blink of an eye. A truck passed by the road. It didn't stop in time. All I could hear was a loud hissing of the brake pads grinding, and then the skidding sound of tires, and then a loud thud followed by silence. Just like that, my little brother was killed. We were devastated after the accident. My parents didn't blame me, but I did. I should have talked to him, should have looked after him. Instead, I glued my eyes to my phone, talking to Zoe about the latest song by some indie band, and my brother was dead. For weeks, we barely left the house. I sometimes wandered to Jason's room and sat there looking at the paintings that he made on the wall and crying alone. The neighbors were very understanding and gave us plenty of gifts, cakes, and condolences. But we'd trade them all for Jason back in an instant. We weren't the only family with grief. Every single family of our neighborhood lost someone. Mrs. Burton lost her husband. The Grovers lost their daughter. Cormac Stanner lived alone, but his dog got sick and died. Each of us lost someone dear, so the McFields were understandably worried about their missing son. They put up posters, asked for help on the local radio station, had volunteer groups searching for him in the surrounding forests. Then I started noticing something strange. First, only Mrs. Burton would put out a chair on her lawn, facing the Grovers' house. But then the McFields did the same thing. After that, Cormac Stanner bought an entire recliner on his front porch. Facing the same direction, the Smiths followed. The Whitakers installed a porch swing. Every day in the afternoon, they would go to the same spot and look at the Grovers' house for an hour. Eventually, my family was the only one left not taking part in the strange observation. Soon, everything became even stranger. I started hearing voices in the night. I knew it was not a dream. I heard it coming from the direction of the Grovers. It sounded like some people were chanting in unison. I eventually chalked it up to some kind of new song they were practicing for Christmas, and put on my muffler, and I fell back asleep. Then the visit started. At first it was only Mrs. Burton. She would come by and leave us the occasional carrot cake, a batch of chocolate chip cookies, or fresh apples from the tree in her backyard. She would talk about how hard it must have been for us, dealing with Jason's death. Then the Smiths would come by with fish from their weekend trip, the Grovers with deer meat from their hunt. Even Cormac Stanner visited us with wine, wearing his garish rainbow sweater. They would all tell us how sorry they were about Jason, and then recommend us to take part in the neighborhood book club called Manuscript. Even my parents saw how weird the whole thing was. They politely declined at first. Your weirdo neighbors give me the creeps. Can never wrap my head around rich people. Zoe texted me when I told her about it. After the shock of Jason's death faded, something broke in my family. Our dinners were starting to fill with uncomfortable silence, like something was missing. My parents started to argue, then fight. Then after that, there would be no apology. I was afraid of being caught in the middle, so I started eating dinner in my room. That was when I was able to observe that the entire neighborhood, save for our family, started gathering at the Grovers at around 8 in the evening. I never saw them leaving. Somehow they would all be up and about as usual the morning after. Then I started to see my neighbors do this weird exercise, where they would kneel down on the grass and put their hands together as if holding up a book. Then they would move their hands forward and bow their heads down close to the ground. They would repeat this 3 times before standing up and going about their days as usual. What was awful was that the neighbors' visits were starting to get to my mom. She mentioned joining the book club a few times to my dad. They just seemed like a bunch of weirdos to me. What will reading books do to help us get over Jason? This town's gone crazy enough with news of people hitting their heads. Then rumors and shadows killing people. We best keep to ourselves, he said one evening, and their conversation once again turned into an argument. Every time Mrs. Burton dropped by and Dad wasn't home, my mom would ask her about the book club. She asked whether there was a membership fee or anything special one had to do. Turned out, it was just a normal book club, save for the fact that they only read one book called The Manuscript. Things were bad, but they were tolerable. It wasn't until Mom went behind Dad's back to attend a reading session of the book club that everything turned out horrible. That morning my dad said he had some business to take care of in town, and wouldn't be back till the evening. Mrs. Burton came by and talked about the book club again. You really should think about it, dear. We're having a reading session today. Would you care to join us? Just for 15 minutes? My mom hesitated, then nodded her head. 15 minutes turned out to be 2 hours. And when my dad was home early, she was still in the Grover's house, taking part in the little book club. He called her phone. She didn't pick up. He ran around like a madman around the neighborhood looking for her, with me following. And when we saw her through the glass panels of the Grovers, I guess something inside him snapped. He practically dragged her out of their house. And my dad was generally a gentle person. He told her that he would not have his wife take part in some crazy club, that it sounded like a religious cult. At least they listened to me. You're controlling and abusive. When was the last time you did that? She screamed to his face. I didn't know whose side to take. They were both right. I was torn and felt horrible. So I ran to my room and called Zoe. I'm really sorry you had to go through that. One of the many reasons why I'm glad to be an orphan sometimes. No family drama, she said. Things started to go downhill. My parents were no longer eating in the same room. My mom ignored my dad and went to the book club more regularly. She started coming home later and later. Sometimes I wouldn't even see her the entire evening. My dad started to spend more and more time in his office. Sometimes he didn't even come home. I felt ignored and lonelier than ever. I felt like I was some sort of obstacle to prevent them from a divorce and just ending the miserable pain that was their failing marriage. I spent most of my time cooped up in my room. For once I was glad that the new college semester was coming. It would mean time in the city and away from all of this. In my neighborhood, the strangeness was just ramping up. Mrs. Burton used to be a gentle and caring old lady, but every time I passed by her, she would shoot me the stare, as if I was some sort of street hooker. She wasn't the only one. The Grovers would also give me strange looks whenever I walked outside their house. Cormac Stanner once looked ready to hunt me down. It wasn't just me. My dad also got the same treatment. We somehow became enemies of the neighborhood. That night, I packed my things and was ready to head to college early. I figured I would spend a couple of days at the dorm reading books. Anything to escape from the hellhole I was in. I asked Zoe to drop by my house. I'd wanted her to sleep over before going to the college with me in the morning. My parents didn't care anymore. My dad said nothing, and my mom immediately went to the Grovers' house after dinner. Zoe and I went to our room and chatted till it was night. I didn't see my mom get back until 10 p.m. From my window on the second floor, I could see nervousness on her face but didn't think much of it. Downstairs, it seemed my parents had started to make up because I could hear music and the faint voice of my mom telling my dad that they should get a drink. I was relieved and went to sleep. Zoe woke me that night. She pressed a finger to her lips and pointed me to the window. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. There were several people in dark robes and they were lining up to enter my house. I heard our front door being opened, then the creaking sounds of footsteps over old woods. I was scared out of my mind. I thought they were burglars and took out my phone to call 911. Zoe put her ears to the door of my room, and after a moment, her eyes widened. She rushed back to bed and told me to pretend I'm sleeping. I shut my eyes as hard as I could and tried my best to not move, but my heart was jumping inside my chest. "She's sleeping," I heard a male voice. It seemed to be Henry Grover. "We'll come back for her." This time was a female voice. It sounded a lot like Kathy McField. And with that, they walked out of our bedroom. We both waited for what seemed like forever, until Zoe slowly got up and peeked outside the window. "Look, they're taking someone," she said and gestured outside. My blood froze the moment I caught eye of who they were taking. It was my dad. He looked like he was still asleep while being carried by his arms and legs. "What the hell is wrong with rich people?" Zoe whispered. "We have to follow them," I said, putting on my hoodie and taking my wallet and phone with me as a habit. We took slow and small steps to not creak the stairs. I looked at my mom's bed. It was empty. We crept downstairs and outside just as one of the robed people closed the door to the Grovers' house. We looked around for a moment and then crouched slowly to the Grovers. We had to know what they were doing, but I couldn't come up with anything. Just then, light lit up from the basement. I suddenly recalled that the Grovers' basement had a window. Me and Zoe got to it, making sure to stay hidden from view and only peeking in. In the middle of the basement was a circle of people. They were all facing an altar, on top of which was a closed notebook with a brown leather cover. Then, 2 men carried my dad to the middle of the circle. "We are the children of the manuscript, and the manuscript is our lifeblood," the robed people said in unison 3 times. My hand trembled, sweat dotting my fingers. Then, a small and familiar figure stepped forward, then removed their robe, and I had to put my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was my mom. "We offer this child to the manuscript, so that his eyes may be opened," she said and took out a knife. "Oh my God, she's going to kill your dad. Call the cops. Call them now," Zoe hissed. I took my phone out of my pocket, but my hand was too sweaty, and the phone wouldn't recognize my fingerprint or face in the darkness. All the meanwhile, my eyes were glued to the window. The 2 men were holding up my dad now. My mom was approaching him with the knife. I thought about screaming out loud to stop them, but something was holding me back. She raised the knife. My eyes burned from not blinking. Then she took my dad's hand and made a small cut on his index finger. We offer this child to the manuscript so that his eyes may be opened. His blood will be the price for initiation, she said, and opened the book on the altar and held his hand over it. Blood dripped from his finger to the notebook and disappeared. Then my dad's head jerked up. His eyes opened wide. A green jet of light entered from the book to his eyes. Then he drooped back down. At this point, I was practically frantic. Zoe put her hand over my mouth and shook her head. She pointed to a corner in the room. My heart sank. There was a shotgun, and next to it, a cage that holds a fox with a clipped ear that was painted bright green. At that moment, I felt something in the air, like being watched from behind. Then I heard the footsteps. "Now what do we have here? Peeping Toms?" A voice called out to us. I was startled. The people in the basement also heard it. Their eyes darted up to where we were standing in unison. I turned around. It was Cormac Stanner. "We were saving this as a present for you, Megan. It seems you have found your way to us anyway. Ready to accept the blessing of the manuscript?" he asked. His face began to contort into a weird smile and his eyes opened wide. "Run!" Zoe screamed. I bolted, but his hands caught me. I struggled and thrashed to no effect. Then Zoe came back and started picking up rocks on the ground and threw them in his face, making loud thuds. "It's Megan we want. You can scurry off now," he said, shrugging off her attacks like they were nothing. Desperate, I began punching him in the face. That was when I realized. His smile never left, and his eyes never blinked. I was absolutely freaked out. Then Zoe jumped in front of him and kicked him square in the balls. Cormac Stanner dropped to the ground, his hands holding his crotch, but still smiling, and his eyes would not blink. Then we heard a click. The Grove's front door opened, and light streamed out. More than a dozen people spilled out and removed their robe. Henry and Martha Grover, Kathy and Abel McField, Gavin and Chloe Smith, Alexander and Lydia Whitaker, many others, and even Mrs. Burton, and finally, my mom and dad. They looked at us. Then their faces warped into a smile that was too wide. Their eyes opened and unblinking. There was a period of silence. The air reeked of wet grass and rot. "I saw the truth in the manuscript, honey. It helped me move on. It would help you too," my mom said before her mouth turned into a smile again. "That's right, honey. I was blind, but my eyes are now open. The manuscript can do the same to you," my dad said. Zoe and I were backing up slowly as the row of people advanced. Slowly, their hands moved in front of them and made a motion as if to hold a book. We turned and ran. They ran after us, their legs running, but their arms still making the book-reading motion and the smiles never leaving their faces. Zoe pointed at Cormac Stanner's car, and we rushed to it. She took out a screwdriver and did something with the door. The sounds of shoes rapping on the concrete were very close now. I was screaming at the top of my lungs for her to hurry up. She opened the car door, and we rushed in just as hands almost grabbed my feet. We held the car door closed while the group of people stood all around it. Zoe ducked down the driver's seat and brought out some wires. "I'm gonna hotwire this thing. Ever drove a car?" she asked me. Kinda," I stammered, my mind blank. The people were surrounding the car now. Zoe successfully primed the car and the engine started. We switched seats and I looked up to see that my parents were standing in front of the car. "There's no point running, honey," they told me, their unblinking eyes boring straight into my soul. Zoe looked at me. Our hands found each other. "Looks like no way out," she said. "What do we do?" I asked her. "Hey Megan, can I borrow your hoodie? Always wanted to wear it. Figured I'd want to wear it once before they caught us. I thought it was a strange request, but listened anyway. I took my hoodie and gave it to her. She put it on and gave me a look, tears in her eyes. Love you more than anything. Come back to save me, okay? Best friends forever? She said before pulling the hood down her face and rushing out of the car through the line of people. They ran after her. I wanted to open the car door, but something inside me screamed not to. I gave her a tearful look goodbye and slammed on the gas pedal. The car darted away from the neighborhood, away from my childhood, from my parents' failing marriage, from the manuscript, and from Zoe. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been running ever since. New town, new place to crash every few days. Never the same place twice. I slept in charity homes and ate their meals. I changed my SIM card. I thought I was safe. Then today, the manager at my latest charity home delivered a speech. We're starting a new book club to help those in mental pain. We'll be reading the manuscript, he said, his smile too wide. My hair stood on its end. It started 2 weeks ago, the faint cries of a baby coming from outside my window, probably 50 or so feet into my backyard, which my window overlooks. At first I was able to turn my fan up and block it out, but after a couple of nights it grew louder, or closer. Attempts to look out my window failed to find its source, and it was far too loud now to try to ignore. Finally, one night, I saw the silhouette of a man. And I seized my chance. After throwing on a coat and slippers to go meet this creep, I suddenly realized how dangerous this was. Some strange man making crying baby sounds in my backyard. I grabbed my baseball bat and proceeded to the back door. When I opened the back door, a wall of rain greeted me. It was pouring, sheets of water slapping against the porch and pooling around my feet. Moments ago, the sky had been clear. Now it felt like a storm had rolled in just for me. I tightened my grip on the bat and stepped out, the cold soaking through my slippers almost instantly. "Hey," I shouted into the dark. The word barely made it past my lips. The rain swallowed it whole, turning my voice into a muffled echo that died before it reached the trees. Through the curtain of water, I could just make out the silhouette again, standing exactly where the cries had come from, motionless, watching. I raised the bat and slammed it against the fence, the sharp crack cutting through the rain. "I'm warning you," I shouted, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. "Get the hell out of here." The figure didn't move at first, just stood there drenched and still. Then slowly he turned and walked off into the darkness, his outline fading behind the curtain of rain until it was gone. I stayed there for a moment, listening. Nothing but the downpour. My heart was hammering, but I told myself it was over. I went back inside, locked the door, and peeled off my soaked slippers. By the time I lay back down, the steady hum of my fan almost lulled me into thinking it had been a dream. Then the crying started again, louder this time, sharper. I froze. It was right outside my window. My hand shook as I reached for the blinds, the sound growing more grotesque with every second. I yanked them open, and there he was. His face was pressed against the glass, rainwater streaking down the pale, sickly skin. His eye sockets were sunken and dark, like pits carved into his skull, and that smile, wide, unnatural, stretching ear to ear, warped as he let out another wailing, infant-like cry. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of my rug as I scrambled for my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. "There's someone outside my house," I yelled into the receiver. The operator tried to calm me down, said officers were on their way. but every second felt like an hour. I kept my eyes locked on the window the whole time. The man didn't move, just kept pressing his face against the glass. That awful grin frozen in place. Then, as the wail of distant sirens finally reached my ears, he turned and vanished into the dark. The police took forever to arrive. By then, the rain had stopped completely. The air was heavy and still, the kind of silence that feels wrong after a storm. They swept the yard, checked the fence, even looked around the trees. Nothing. Just muddy footprints leading up to my window. Prints that seemed to fade and disappear halfway back toward the woods. They told me it was probably a prank, maybe someone passing through. I nodded and pretended to believe them. When they left, the house felt emptier than ever. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was over. For a while it was quiet. Then came the sound again, the baby's cry. Closer. I sat up, furious and terrified all at once. Enough, I muttered, flipping on the light. That's when I saw them. Muddy footprints, fresh, leading across my carpet, right up to the closet door. The crying was louder now, coming from inside. I stood there staring at the closet, my breath shallow, the sounds of that awful crying still leaking out from behind the door. My hand tightened around the bat as I took slow, cautious steps forward, the floorboards creaking under my feet. When I finally reached the handle, I hesitated, just long enough to hate myself for it, then yanked the door open. The crying stopped. Inside, on the closet floor, lay something small and wet. I squinted, leaning closer. It wasn't a baby. It wasn't even human. It was a tiny, half-formed bird. Pink skin stretched thin, its wings barely developed, trembling slightly as if still alive. A baby bird fetus. I stumbled back, disgusted and confused. What the hell? I whispered, my voice cracking. The smell hit me next, something sour and metallic, and I covered my mouth, trying not to gag. Then a sound from behind me made my blood run cold. Thud. I whipped my head around. My bed had moved, bouncing once, hard enough to rattle the frame. Another thud. Then the blanket began to shift, as if something underneath was crawling, pushing its way up. The fabric stretched and lifted, slowly spreading over a single, human-sized lump right in the center. A baby's cry suddenly shot into my ear, so sharp and close it felt like it came from inside my head, right against my eardrum. The sound burst through me, rupturing something deep within. I screamed and clutched my ear as warm blood began to run down my neck, thick and hot against my skin. Still, half bent over, I stared at the bed. The lump under the blanket was moving again, slowly rising and falling as if it were breathing. I didn't have my bat. I'd dropped it somewhere near the closet, and my phone was my only weapon left. I grabbed it, but the screen was dead, black, reflecting only my shaking face. Panic took over. Without thinking, I hurled it at the bed. The second it hit, a pale, bony hand shot out from underneath the blanket, impossibly fast. It snatched the phone midair and slammed it down onto the floor, the crack of shattering glass echoing through the room. Then came the sounds again, high-pitched, gurgling baby noises, layered and distorted, as if dozens of tiny throats were crying all at once from inside the mattress. Suddenly the blanket began to bulge and writhe. One by one, tiny shapes pushed their way out from underneath, then tumbled onto the floor with wet, heavy thuds. Dozens of them, ash-white babies, their skin almost translucent under the light, eyes sealed shut, yet still crying, each sound piercing and unnatural. They began crawling toward me, their little limbs jerking in unnatural rhythm, their cries overlapping into a deafening chorus. I stumbled back, kicking at the door, but there were too many. Cold, slick hands clung to my legs, my arms, my clothes. I tried to scream as they climbed higher, their mouths opening wide, too wide, and then the biting started. Tiny teeth sank into my skin, my arms, my neck, my face. I swung and thrashed, but they just kept coming, the room echoing with the shrill, endless sound of crying. And then, everything stopped. The sound, the movement, the pain. The room was still. The biting, the screaming, all of it gone. I blinked through tears and blood, chest heaving, and realized sunlight was slipping through the blinds. Morning. The floor was empty. No babies, no hand, just the wreckage of my room. Blood on the carpet, my shattered phone beside the bed, and muddy prints fading into nothing. I don't remember much after that. I managed to get myself to the hospital where they treated my wounds and ran tests. The cuts didn't make sense, they said, but they stitched me up and told me to rest. Now I'm home again. The house feels too quiet. My ear still throbs where the drum burst, and I swear sometimes I can hear faint crying when I close my eyes. The sun's going down soon, and I'm scared of what tonight has to bring. I'm making this post right now because I need people to know about the experience that I had earlier this morning. I don't know what to believe or who to talk to, and I'm really scared. My wife works early in the morning and usually goes to bed between 11 and midnight. I am in between jobs, currently unemployed, and studying for my real estate license exams. In other words, I'm on my own schedule and therefore can afford to stay up till 5 in the morning and sleep in till noon if I want to. This usually ends up being the case. I am a natural night owl, more than any person I know. Like I said, my wife normally goes to bed around midnight, after which I will proceed to stay up for several more hours on my own. Sometimes I'll sit in bed and watch YouTube right next to her until I get tired. Other times I'll go into the living room of our small student apartment and watch a scary movie or something. She usually won't want to watch those with me anyway, so this works out great. The consequence of staying up until all hours and being the rabid horror fan I am is that I have become very paranoid. The lack of sleep, mixed with my often overactive imagination, has led me to be almost always looking over my shoulder. Ever since I was 10, I've had a sinking feeling that someone, somewhere, is always out to get me. My slight paranoia has often been the butt of thousands of jokes from my wife, friends, and family, but I don't blame them. It can be something as harmless as a man sitting alone at a restaurant, and I will stare him down, just so he knows I'm onto him. When I think about it, it's a pretty dumb and weird thing to do, but for me, it's near instinctual. No, I don't blame their teasing at all. If you saw my behavior and appearance for yourself, it all adds up. I have a gaunt, wide-eyed expression at all times. When I walk home from campus alone at night, my head snaps to the side at the slightest noise, like a trained hunting dog smelling for squirrels. I like to say that my guard is always up, but the truth is that I am irrationally terrified of the world. One of the weirdest things I've started doing this last year is staring through the peephole of our front door for hours on end. It'll be well past midnight, pitch black in our apartment, my wife in the next room, and I will just sit and watch. For what? I'm not sure. Intruders? Thieves, maybe? We live in the cheapest student housing available, but still someone could come by. I'm telling you all of these things about myself in hopes that someone can talk me down from the fear I feel regarding what I saw last night. I want someone to tell me that I'm crazy, that I'm imagining things, and that I should seek help. The night before last, my wife and I were cleaning our apartment and needed to do some laundry, which I volunteered to do. The laundromat in our complex is close enough to walk to, but if the weather is ever bad enough, you could justify taking a car. Sometime in the afternoon, I walked to the laundromat, put our clothes in the wash, and later moved them to the dryer. I came and went that afternoon, spent the last of our laundry quarters, and everything was fine. We had friends over that night, and they didn't leave until just before midnight. The night passed like any other, as did the next day. Every night, when my wife goes to bed early, at least by my standards, I usually like to sit in bed with her and talk or cuddle as she drifts off to sleep. On this particular night, being the responsible one in our marriage, she reminded me that we had forgotten to get the clothes out of the dryer. She asked if I could go get them, and pointed out that by this point, our clothes had been sitting in the dryer for almost 2 days. I protested at first, saying it was too late now, and that I'd get them tomorrow. Now, here's the thing. I'm a paranoid scaredy cat. I can admit it, but our laundromat would be considered creepy by anyone. It's got this eerie green lighting. The road outside has a streetlight that flickers in the dark, and there's something weird with the doors that seems to block out all outside noise, creating a creepy, dead silence. My wife asked me again nicely, pointing out that I would be up anyway, and that she didn't want to risk our clothes getting set and lost and found. I agreed with her good points and relented. I would head over later that night. For the next few hours, I wrestled with myself and my fear about leaving. On one side, I was creeped out, but on the other, we did need to get our clothes. We needed to get them soon, but my cowardice was winning me over. It wasn't until 4:45 a.m. that I finally got myself to leave the apartment. I stepped outside and was immediately hit with a chill. It had been raining for the last few hours. The smell of rain and pavement perfumed my nostrils as I made my way to my dew-dropped car, and I pulled out of the parking lot saying, "Let's get this over with," to myself. As I said, the laundromat is close enough to walk, but no way in hell I wasn't taking the car. I got there in literally 45 seconds. The laundromat was exactly as I described it earlier, eerily bright and quiet. It looked like a hospital room scene in a haunted attraction. I quickly made my way over to the dryer machine that I had put our clothes in the night before, quickly and frantically, throwing it all into our laundry bag. The laundromat was unnaturally warm for an empty building at 4 a.m., and I wasn't planning on being there any longer than I had to. Then I heard something that I will never forget. I heard a scratchy, vile, high-pitched voice call out, "Hello." My blood turned to ice at the sound of it. Every hair stood on end. My fists instinctively curled into fists. It sounded like a sick person. The voice was coming from the other side of the wall, where the washing machines were, and so I couldn't see how close it was or what it even was. The voice let out 2 distinct, low groaning sounds, like an old vacuum cleaner, and then continued, "Are you as filthy as me?" The voice then dipped from high to low. "Are you?" It wasn't low like Darth Vader. It sounded like a kid trying to do a low voice, like they were doing it in a mocking way. I cannot put into words how horrible this voice was. I could grow to be a 90-year-old man and still have nightmares about it. It was unlike any person or animal I had ever heard. All I could do was toss the rest of our crap into the laundry bag and pray that whatever the hell was making that noise was on the phone with someone or maybe pulling a prank. I didn't bother shutting the dryer door, and I didn't run either. The thought of laying eyes on whatever was making that voice felt as unbearable as hell itself. But I had to try. I gripped my keys in between my fingers, trying to create makeshift brass knuckles. I quickly walked out from behind the wall, bracing myself for some kind of horrible confrontation, but there was nothing there. Literally nothing and nobody. I let out a sharp exhale of relief, nearly crying in the process. I didn't know what had made those noises, if I had imagined it or not, and I didn't want to find out. I quickly walked out of the building and started my car. As I started my car, I looked up and saw, quite possibly, the worst sight I will ever see in my life. In the large window of the laundromat, I saw a terrible, evil thing. It was a man, I suppose, but I had never seen a man like this. It had wild blondish hair that was matted, pokey, and greasy. I could only see it from the shoulders up, but it was awfully bony and thin. It had eyes like a rat that stared into my soul and made me feel unsafe. It wore a hospital gown that, to my surprise, was clean and nearly spotless from what I briefly saw. Worst of all, though, were its lips. They looked blistered and cracked, and stained red. They weren't bold red like a clown, but rather faded red like dried blood. It just stared at me with some kind of unnatural, bored smile, its small black eyes digging into my very being. It had both of its scrawny hands placed on its hollow cheeks and was stretching its face at me, pulling its skin tight, baring its teeth and causing its little eyes to squint. It looked like something out of the worst of my nightmares. Then, without warning, it started running. It took a sharp right and started running down the hallway toward the exit, where I parked. I could see it sprinting through the windows at breakneck speed. Panicking, I attempted to jam my keys into the ignition, but wound up dropping them, of course. Like my life depended on it, I quickly bent down to grab them off the car floor, my breath picking up speed like a train. I sat back up, and the thing was right outside my window, pressed against the glass of my door. It was still pulling at its face, making the worst possible expression. Its fingernails were yellow and infected. The skin around its neck was covered in little boils and tiny dark holes, its teeth copper-colored, and its gums rotten and frothy. Worst of all, however, it was me. This thing, its face, it was my face. It was like a twisted version of my reflection staring back at me, its eyes still black and tiny, its face still stretched, but it was me. It even had the same triangle-shaped birthmark that I have over my left eyebrow. I screamed as the thing headbutted my car window, shattering it and getting glass all over me. I screamed and screamed with tears in my eyes as I quickly reversed the car, putting a few feet of space between me and the thing. While I was putting it in drive, the creature stared at me with a face that both was and wasn't mine, now with blood and glass shards all over it, sticking out of its skin from my window. I just sat and stared, its untainted hospital gown fluttering in the early morning wind. I stepped on the gas and got the hell out of there. I swear I almost had a panic attack and crashed the car. I must have driven around town for 45 minutes before I headed back for home. I quickly parked the car and ran into our apartment. It was just under 6 a.m., and the sun was beginning to peek over the horizon. I closed and locked the front door and fell to my knees. I wanted to cry, or throw up, or both. Looking back, I might have been in shock, but I'm not exactly sure what I was feeling even at the point of me writing this. I sat on the couch, caught my breath, and cried a little before eventually falling asleep. My wife woke me up for a goodbye kiss before she went to work, and to ask me why I had slept on the couch. At this point, I was running on about 3 hours of sleep, and so my answer was pretty much gibberish, but I lied and said it was too hot in our room. The events that had happened only a few hours earlier came flooding back to me in my sleep-deprived delirium, and my heart started to beat at rabbit speed again. What was at the laundromat last night? Did I imagine all of that? Was it a result of sleep deprivation and paranoia? Is there someone dangerous hiding out in our complex? Should I tell someone? Who would believe me? Am I safe? Why did it look like me? I don't know what to do. Should I talk to the police or at least campus security? I know I'll sound insane if I share too many details. Should I start talking to a therapist? Would a therapist believe me? Should I tell my wife? Would she even believe me? I'm not sure if I believe me. I'm more stressed than I've ever been, but there's one thing I do know for sure. After she left for work, I heard my wife walk past where I had parked my car and say, "What the hell?" I've never been one for old tech, but when I found the CRT TV at a garage sale for $5, I couldn't resist. It was a bulky, ancient thing, all knobs and dials, the kind my grandparents had in their living room. The seller, an old man with shaky hands, seemed eager to get rid of it. "Works fine," he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. "Just don't watch it too late." I laughed it off, handing him the cash, and lugged the beast home to my apartment. I set it up in my living room, more for the retro vibe than anything else. Hooked it up to an old VCR I had from a thrift store score, and popped in a random tape I'd found in a box labeled Miscellaneous. The screen flickered to life, spitting out static and snow, but after some fiddling with the antenna, I got a grainy picture. The tape was some old home movie. Kids playing in a backyard, birthday candles, nothing special. I left it running as background noise while I cooked dinner. That's when I first saw it. The tape ended and the screen went to static, but in the white noise, there was something. A shape, faint like a face pressing through the static. Watching it, I froze, spatula in hand, staring at it. The face didn't move, didn't blink, just hovered there, indistinct but undeniably human. I unplugged the TV, heart racing, and told myself it was just paranoia. My brain making patterns where there weren't any. Old TVs do that, right? The next night, I couldn't resist turning it on again. No tape this time, just the static. The face was back, clearer now. It was a woman, I think, with hollow eyes and a mouth that seemed to stretch too wide. She didn't move, but I swear she was looking right at me. I changed the channel, hoping for a signal, but every station was the same. Static and her face, staring. I yanked the plug again and shoved the TV into a closet. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. That stretched mouth, those empty eyes. Around 2 a.m. I heard it. A low hiss like static coming from the closet. I told myself it was impossible. The TV wasn't plugged in, but the sound grew louder, and with it, a whisper. Too faint to make out, but heavy with intent. I didn't dare open the closet door. The next day I searched online for anything about the TV's brand. A no-name model from the 80s, long out of production. I found a forum post buried in an archive, written by someone claiming their TV trapped things. They described a face in the static. Watching them, whispering their name. The post ended abruptly, with no follow-up. The user's account was gone. I decided to get rid of the TV. I dragged it to the curb, left a free sign on it, and went back inside, but when I checked an hour later, it was back in my living room, cord coiled neatly, screen dark. I hadn't told anyone about it, and my apartment was locked. I smashed the screen with a hammer, glass shattering everywhere, and hauled the pieces to a dumpster across town. I thought that was the end. Last night, I woke up to the hiss of static. My laptop, which I'd left closed on my desk, was open, screen glowing with snow. Her face was there, clearer than ever, mouth moving like she was trying to speak. I slammed the laptop shut, but the sound didn't stop. It was coming from my phone, my speakers, even the walls. And then a whisper clear as day. You can't turn me off. I'm typing this from a library computer because I can't trust my devices anymore. The static follows me, faint but always there, in the background of every call, every video, every quiet moment. I see her face in reflections now, not just screens. The mirror, the window, even a puddle on the street. She's getting closer. If you've ever seen a face in the static, if you know what she wants, please tell me. I don't know how much longer I can keep her out.